Well, have I got an update for you? Absolutely impeccable source from inside Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home tells me that Kevin Rudd has been ringing the senior team around Donald Trump, trying to contact the president. They don't want a bar of him. Calls are not being returned. This was said to my impeccable source by someone very high up in the Trump team, the transition team. Make of that what you will. Kevin, I don't think the issue is whether you want to work with Donald Trump. And I do think the government is facing a real problem with him in the job. I warned about this as far back as January, that it was not sustainable, and now it's not. Meanwhile, the ABC, it should die of shame after its Media Watch on Monday blamed Jewish soccer fans for being hunted in Amsterdam 2 weeks ago and bashed. Utter disgrace. Media Watch host Paul Barry cannot be allowed to get away with this. Now, I featured on this show, of course, being a Media Watch hate figure. Almost all Sky presenters are.
The streets of Amsterdam. Vision reportedly showing Jewish soccer fans hunted like animals.
The Dutch have been shamed and shocked by a Jew hunt by Muslims in the streets of Amsterdam.
Also, full coverage tonight of the Amsterdam pogrom.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And there were pogroms and Jew hunts making headlines on Sky News last week after clashes between pro-Palestinian protesters and Israeli soccer fans in Amsterdam.
But Barry, like many in the media left around the world, are busily rewriting this history. People like me, people that I used to see, we apparently got that story wrong.
They ignored or glossed over half the story.
Yes, apparently the Jews are to blame, at least in part, for being hunted and bashed.
2 angry mobs were involved, with violence on both sides.
So, what was the other side of the story, according to Paul Barry? It was this.
The day before the match against local team Ajax, Maccabi fans ripped down and burnt a Palestinian flag, while groups of supporters also beat up a taxi driver and vandalised several taxis. And on match day, around 1,000 fans massed in the city centre and let off flares. Then marched to the stadium, chanting racist, anti-Arab chants.
Now, in fact, if you've seen my show last week, you'll know I reported most of that. But what is Barry suggesting? That tearing down a flag and lighting flares or chanting rude insults justifies and explains a mob that then bashes Jews? Even if it's true. Which is interesting. Interesting theory. What's more, we don't know why, or the circumstances surrounding why a taxi driver was allegedly beaten. I should add, though, that I have seen and shown you video of one driver, one of many Muslim drivers in Amsterdam, saying he was on a Jew hunt. That's his own words. Jodenjacht, Jew hunt. We need to know more about what actually happened with that incident. We don't know, and Barry doesn't know for sure. Now, note how Barry refers to those flares and the insults and the tearing down of a flag.
Media reports did mention these provocations.
Provocations, bad Jews provoking what then happened to them. Now it gets worse. In fact, soon very much worse. And by the way, caution, I'm showing some video of violence. Then came Paul Barry's gotcha. Many TV outlets had used footage, much of it filmed by a guy called Bender, 16-year-old Dutch vlogger, he did a good job, of Israelis with sticks chasing someone. And they falsely claimed this showed Muslims chasing a Jew, which was wrong.
That distressing footage actually showed Israeli fans doing the hunting. The same rampaging Maccabi fans were also captured by 14-year-old Dutch vlogger Ome Bender. Bender's 17-minute video showed Maccabi fans
stealing steel pipes, putting on masks and chasing someone. A metal pipe appears to be thrown at a police vehicle.
Barry is both right and desperately misleading in describing these rampaging Jews. What he does not show is what this Bender showed beforehand, before that happened. And he described it as he filmed it.
Er worden vuurwerkbommetjes afgestoken. Oh, ze zijn palen uit de grond aan het jatten. Ze hebben palen uit de grond gejat. Ik denk om zichzelf te weren van mensen die ze lastigvallen. Er is geen politie, dus ik weet niet precies. Het is nogal een heel gespannen sfeertje. Het lijkt er echt op alsof de politie eigenlijk niks doet. Volgens mij al die taxis, dat was dus gisteravond ook, die zijn niet zo blij met de actie.
And it was only then the Israelis besieged and unprotected by police, unable to even to take a taxi to safety. A lot of Muslim taxi drivers, whatever, they were told not to. It was only then that these Jews lashed out at one person. And even then, it's after some confrontation, Bender couldn't see or film. You don't know what started that. Now, amazingly, Barry even claimed that many outlets had used this wrong footage of Maccabi fans actually chasing someone, not the other way around, because he said there was really nothing else. Really nothing else to show. How false is that? There was plenty of other vision, but of Jews being beaten, some kicked senseless by the apparently Muslim attackers.
This for the children! For the children!
I'll give you my money, I'll give you, please go.
For the children!
I'll give you my money.
Free Palestine now! Free Palestine!
Other footage shows a terrified Jew who escaped the people chasing him by jumping into a canal, while Muslims looking for more Israelis demanded people show passports.
Passport. Passport. Where are you from?
In the end, 5 Jews were put in hospital, but not one Muslim. Yet the ABC, this Paul Barry, claims Jews were guilty of provocations, mocks the idea of a Jew hunt, and says they were rampaging through Amsterdam. How very sick. Joining me is Rowan Dean, Editor-in-Chief of The Spectator Australia and host of Outsiders on Sky News every Sunday at 9 a.m. Rowan, what is going on here?
Well, Andrew, it's terrific, and thank you for taking us through all that detail. The bottom line here is yet again the ABC, Paul Barry, hang their heads in shame. What we see always is 2 things, and this Paul Barry Media Watch segment showed them beautifully. The 2 things that always the left default to. One is this kind of moral equivalence, where they can only ever talk about Jews being persecuted or anti-Semitism or attacks on Jews or anything with this kind of weird moral equivalence. You've got A team and B team, or the blue team and, you know, whatever team, and they're both kind of the same. They're doing it to each other. So that kind of excuses anti-Semitic hatred, violence, and so on. And the other game, which the left play all the time and anti-Semites play all the time, and Barry played this card as well, was to say, well, not enough Jews died, so nobody actually died in this. So what are we worried about? How can you call it a pogrom? I'm paraphrasing him, I'm quoting from memory, but he said something along the lines of, how could you call it a pogrom when nobody died? Because the definition of a pogrom is a massacre. Let's just get back to basics. And as for that word provocation, that is so sinister by itself. Let me remind you that we had on October 9th in Sydney mobs going around the Opera House screaming out, gas the Jews, and that was the allegation, and the New South Wales police said, oh, no. They weren't saying gas the Jews. They were just saying, where's the Jews? So where's the Jews is a kind of harmless thing. Well, we've seen here in Amsterdam what where's the Jews looks like. It looks like a guy being kicked on the ground. It looks like some character ending up in the canal. It looks like people running for their lives in fear or grabbing pipes to defend themselves, which is what the blogger said. It was an act of self-defense. So always, the big story the left want to deny and play down is the real story here, Andrew, is that this is Amsterdam. Amsterdam, where a young teenage girl hid in fear for her life during the Second World War, hid for months, years on end in a cupboard, terrified out of her wits because she was Jewish and she was being hunted. And she was being hunted down to be killed. And she wrote a diary about the sheer terror and inhumanity of that situation. And here we are all these years later in Amsterdam with people being hunted down because they are Jewish, and with very serious intent to cause harm to them. That's the real story. It is despicable. The Prime Minister of Holland recognised this fact and spoke about it accordingly, and the right-thinking world recognised the sheer horror that in Amsterdam, where Anne Frank hid, yet again, angry mobs are hunting and threatening to kill Jews. That's the true story. That's the only story. And to try and obfuscate and dissemble the story and say, well, this person filmed that, and over here was this, and Sky News, blah, 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 blah. And well done to Shari and yourself and Erin for bringing that story so forcefully to the forefront of viewers' minds, because it was a horror show. And fortunately, nobody died. But the vile suggestion that, oh, it can't be a pogrom because nobody died. I mean, that is really sinister.
Yeah, but also the provocation. I mean, for example, pulling out the sticks to protect themselves. It seems to me that the logic is that had these Jews not fought back, and a number, we're told, might have been, have served in the IDF, in the Israeli army, so they knew how to protect themselves. If they had not protected themselves, if they had let themselves just be bashed, that would have been okay. That would have been okay. And also notice, in that entire report by Paul Barry, all the attention was on what the Jews did wrong. There was nothing from him about what their persecutors had done wrong. I think that says a lot. And I want to know why it is, who in the ABC is going to call out Paul Barry when this man was appointed the ABC's on-screen media policeman. Well, who's going to call him out on air?
Exactly. And if you want a provocation, Andrew, if we're going to play the provocations game, let me just remind viewers that the horrors of October 7th, that was provocation. That was genuine provocation. Tearing down a flag, I'm sorry, doesn't count in my book.
Oh, look, what mob of football hooligans hasn't done a lot of what Paul Barry says is provocation, but you don't see people getting hunted down the street. Rowan, the global warming craziness, right, it's now going to be seriously tackled by Donald Trump and his team. Yeah, we've just had Energy Minister Chris Bowen at the UN Climate Conference in Azerbaijan just hand over another $50 million for Pacific Islands in particular to give, for supposed climate action. You know, I don't think we've got the right Chris as our energy minister when Trump has got this Chris Wright who's calling out this scaremongering.
Absolutely. And everything we are doing, the Albanese government is doing, is deliberately flying in the face of the Trump administration and the amazing team that Trump has put together, which is going to change our world. It is, as I said the other day, it's a renaissance of the West. The COP29 is literally a gathering, a fringe comedy festival. You have Chris Bowen wandering around saying that we're not going to go nuclear because it's sunnier in Melbourne than London, something actually I dispute, having been in both cities. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the idea that we are threatening our alliance with America and Britain, our nuclear arrangement, obviously AUKUS is a nuclear agreement. It's built around the nuclear subs, and it's built around the promise of us having nuclear submarines, the ultimate deterrence against China. And yet here we have, oh, no, we're not going to have nuclear, says Chris Bowen, because it's sunnier in Melbourne. Fantastic defence strategy. I'm not sure what Richard Marles is making of all this, but at the same time, when Chris Bowen, when people at COP29 are shaking their heads and raising an eyebrow to Chris Bowen, we know we're really in trouble.
It's true. Honestly, you're just talking there, Rowan. So his argument against nuclear power is that we've actually got more wind here. In that case, isn't the argument against nuclear submarines that we should have a submarine with a sail on it instead? Maybe that was the go. Why are we going nuclear with submarines then? Rowan Dean, it's madness, and I hope Australians are going to see through that come the election time. Thank you so much for your time.